As all aspects of our world become increasingly globalised, it's vital economically, politically and socially that we're able to build and maintain relationships across countries and cultures. For this reason, the Arts and Humanities Research Council's Translating Cultures theme is looking at the role of translation in its very broadest sense. Theme Leadership Fellow for Translating Cultures, Professor Charles Forsdick from the University of Liverpool, explains more.
I'm a modern linguist. My language that I've studied is French, and I've always seen modern linguists as figures involved in the translation and mediation of other cultures. So our role is not simply to teach and study other languages and cultures. It's to make sure that our understanding of those languages and cultures is brought back to and enriches the United Kingdom. The theme's addressing a series of challenges which are to do with the UK's relationship to other parts of Europe, but also other parts of the world. Translating Cultures allows us to think about the place of language, the place of cross-cultural communication in commerce, diplomacy, in general intercultural relations. And what seems essential to the theme for me is that it should be seen as having an impact on the highest levels of politics and strategy, but also a relevance for individual lives. The 21st century is characterised by increased mobility because of phenomena like the internet. It's characterised by increased interconnectedness. We all now live in a society which it's very difficult to define on simply national lines. Translating Cultures as a theme helps us to understand the society in which we live. It helps us to understand those around us, and it helps us to think through ways of living together. It's also about understanding the ways in which we don't communicate across cultures, because the untranslatable moments when translation breaks down are clearly very important for understanding not just episodes in our individual lives, but also diplomatic incidents and moments of international conflict.
Current projects are already looking at a variety of significant areas.
There are immediate benefits to rigorous understanding of translation. If I could give you an example of one project that the AHRC is currently funding. This is a group of colleagues and scholars who are working with SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, considering the ways in which the lack of capacity in other languages is actually an impediment to international business. So we can provide concrete examples of the ways in which colleagues and scholars in the field of translation studies, working with non-academic partners, are having a concrete impact, in that case on the British economy. There are a series of other examples, though, in the creative economy. Currently the HRC is funding projects on theatrical adaptation, and what seems of paramount importance to me is a recognition of the centrality of translation to British life. Translation and living across other languages, not simply living monolingually, is part of recognition of the connectedness of the UK, not just in Europe, but to cultures throughout the world. There's a fascinating project being run by colleagues in Westminster called China in Britain, Myths and Realities, which on the one hand is historicising the role of the Chinese community in Britain and looking at waves of migration, looking at issues of prejudice and intolerance towards that community, but emphasising the important contribution that the British Chinese community has made to this country over a series of centuries. At the same time, though, that project is an opportunity to think about the contemporary relationship between Britain and China and the increasing importance of that relationship in economic and in cultural terms.
The theme also crosses into other academic disciplines.
Translating Cultures takes as its core an understanding of linguistic translation. But it's essential to stress that as a theme, it has implications for all the subjects across arts and humanities, not just modern languages and translation studies, but also it's very important for the development of those subjects which are at the interface of arts and humanities and other areas. And I'm thinking of legal studies, I'm thinking of international relations, but also disciplines linked to medicine. In the case of medicine, a scientific discipline, humanities research allows us to reflect on clinical situations, the place of language in those situations, and to improve the delivery of care to individuals whose language might not be English and whose culture might not be originally British. In addition, the theme will look at questions of youth language. There's a very firm interest in language and digital communication, for example, the role of English and other languages on the internet. And at the same time, and maybe this underpins a broad range of the research being conducted under the theme, it allows us to investigate questions of identity, national identity, but also the way in which national identity depends on international connections.
So, in many respects, Charles says the research associated with the theme of translating cultures could be a vital part of helping us to deal with many of the challenges facing the world today.
I think that two major threats are ethnocentrism, a belief that one's own culture is superior to other cultures, but also monolingualism, a restriction of people to a single language. And it's clear that monolingualism is peculiar to a small number of societies, really, because were one in North Africa or Sub-Saharan Africa, multilingualism, operating constantly between languages, what I'd call living translationally, is a part of everyday life. So the hope is that translating cultures as a theme will allow us, through research projects, through the development of new skills, and through interaction with non-academic partners, to understand more fully the relationships between cultures, the importance of communication between cultures, and the challenges inherent to that type of communication. If we don't recognise the importance of working across languages and cultures, if we don't recognise the importance of translation as a central aspect of arts and humanities research in the UK, I fear that that research will simply no longer be internationally competitive, and it will no longer harness fully its potential to have an impact across a whole range of strategically important spheres, such as commerce, diplomacy, and international relations. Talking to people in other cultures increases our tolerance, our global understanding, and it increases our sense of being part of an interconnected world.